morning. Welcome to the CIDCI Online Salon Series. I'm Margie O'Driscoll, and on behalf of the CIDCI Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome you here today for our first online webinar of the year. CIDCI is a not-for-profit organization that relies on your financial support to provide these programs. Thank you to our sponsors who make all of this possible. As the year begins, we hope you and yours are staying healthy and happy. It was a difficult holiday season for so many of us, and we hope you are able to find both joy and rest during this period. In 2022, CIDCI hopes to renew in-person events in a number of United States cities, subject to local health directives. We miss seeing your beautiful faces and hearing you laugh. Stay tuned as we begin to imagine a new way of connecting that will, of course, include a virtual element. If you aren't yet on our mailing list, please sign up at CIDCI.org. And here's an invitation. Please consider participating in CIDCI as a listener to these free webinars or as a sponsor. If your company needs to stay abreast of the latest innovations, and if you want to inspire your colleagues, we are your go-to destination. Okay, here's a bit of information about how today's session will work. We're recording this presentation and we'll place it on the CIDCI website and YouTube as soon as possible. If you have questions or comments during the presentation, please use the chat box. Today's session will run for 60 minutes. At CIDCI, we hear a lot from our community about how the industry is scrambling to respond to customers' infrastructure and building needs. And technology is almost always cited as the silver bullet. A multitude of technology fixes overwhelms today's marketplace, leaving us all wondering where to turn. Today, CIDCI board member and NYU professor Semiha Ergan will be in conversation with Niknaz Aftahi and John Priestland about the technology tools available and their tips about how to sort through the overload. A bit about our panelists. Semiha Ergan, as I said, is a professor of civil and urban engineering at NYU and a CIDCI board member. She also leads the Building Informatics and Visualization Lab, where she actively seeks data-driven and model-based solutions to operational challenges associated with the construction and operation of buildings. I'd like to also add, she's a really terrific moderator for CIDCI panel discussions. I'd also like to introduce you to our two panelists. Niknaz Aftahi is a Bay Area-based trained architect who's really passionate about access for all. She recently launched aec+tech, the first online platform exclusively dedicated to featuring the latest AEC technologies and their real-world applications. Welcome, Niknaz. Joining us from the other side of the pond is John Priestland. His consulting practice specializes in digital transformation and construction technology. He will discuss a bit about his founding of CTEC Club in 2019, a networking group of startup construction technology leaders. Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you can join us. Semiha, would you like to get us started?
Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation. So we'll get started with perspectives that we will hear from Niknaz and John today about how do we deal with this evolving pace of technology that's coming out into the help of the AEC industry. So technology, as we all know, is evolving very fast-paced. Some of the solutions are mature, some of them are still to get robust. And we see this flood of solutions coming out for improving our AEC industry to streamline or automate some of the work processes that we have. We have seen various startups being formed with great solutions to solve some of our problems that we typically deal with when designing, constructing, or operating the facilities in the built environment. So the bottleneck, however, is real. So there's a bottleneck when we are trying to find the right solutions for the problems that we have at hand. So finding technological solutions so far seems to be random, disorganized, and ad hoc. So the big question that we have is, how do we sort through the solution space we are offered to transform our work processes in the AEC industry? So I'd like to start the conversation and ask, what are some pathways that are effective to find our solutions given this vast number of technological solutions out there? So I'd like to get started with maybe John to share his experience and perspective first, followed by Niknaz. And then I'll open the conversation to a set of questions that we can have a conversation for this big problem that we're dealing with today. John?
Fantastic. Thank you, Semiha. So delighted to be with you here today. I've got 20 years experience in engineering, consultancy and design, and almost a decade working in and around technology and digital. And one of the things that we realized back in 2019, working with a number of construction technology startups, is that they all have similar challenges, but they're not the challenges that one would necessarily start by thinking that they are those challenges. Often young founders, often inexperienced, given a lot of responsibility. And we realized that by bringing those founders together and creating a community, they can learn from each other. And that's how the CTEC Club was founded. And it is one of the only groups that we know of that really brings founders together to work and collaborate together, be it with their different companies. And that through that sort of community comes the information exchange that I think is at the heart of really trying to get to grips with which technology is really worth bothering with, spending your time on, and which is not going to make it for you or not going to make it per se. So that's the perspective of the CTEC Club, building on what Margie was asking about earlier. And I think it's the sort of the backdrop to our perceptions around the challenges and the opportunities of finding the right technology for your needs as users in AEC or elsewhere.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me and including me in this exciting and great conversation. So I'm an architect. I've been working for about 10 years in the architecture industry. I'm trained as an architect, and I've been working with different size architecture firms, mostly here in the Bay Area. And what I realized was that, so as a young graduate, so I studied at UC Berkeley, and I was working on so many exciting projects using a lot of exciting technologies at school. And then once I graduated, working in architectural practice, I realized how still old-fashioned we do things. And I really got frustrated by how difficult it is to find out about what's happening in the tech world. So I've been personally very interested to keep up and learn about, new tools, new software. But I realized that especially for smaller size firms and for medium sized firms, there's no centralized way. The way we keep up with technology is very outdated, is very decentralized, is very disconnected, and it just doesn't work. Imagine if I always think about like the doctors. Imagine if doctors find out about the latest and greatest through friends and through their social media pages. So how scary it would be. So that's basically how professionals in the AEC industry are right now learning about, new products, new tools. So we either have to go to expensive and lengthy conferences, and it's before pandemic, and now there are online conferences, so it's easier to access, and many of them are free, but you still have to spend time. And then after the conference is over, there's no really centralized resource that you can go back and find out what happened during the conference, or you have to constantly be following people on social media and see what they're posting and just save them for yourself. So I decided to start aec+tech as a centralized resource, as a database, as an online platform for the AEC industry to be able to keep up with what's happening in the technology world through sharing real-world case studies. So I believe real-world projects and those case studies are very powerful in showing the power of these new technologies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. I think it would be great for our listeners to hear a little bit more about what John mentioned and what you mentioned, Niknaz. So it's great and it's exciting to hear about these technologies out there, aec+tech. For the purpose of summarizing what the aec+tech as a platform can provide to the AEC community, especially for the listeners, if you were to describe your platform in one sentence, what would it look like?
Sure, I would say an online platform and a growing community of AEC technologies as well as AEC professionals where they can keep up with the latest tools and technologies
out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I summarize, the major user groups that you have are the AEC professionals and the tech community.
Yeah, exactly. These are the main two groups that we have. We designed the platform for, but we also do have right now builders, developers, a number of relators, investors, as well as students and individuals who are just interested to keep up with what's happening.
How big is this platform with respect to engagement from both professionals and the tech community? Is it like an equally distributed participation from both of these groups, or it's like one group is heavily dominated in the platform?
Yeah, so since we launched in mid-2021, so now we have about 90 AEC technology companies, as well as a number of AEC firms, including, some bigger ones are like MBBJ, Bjark Ingel, Walter P. Moore, and we have a number of medium-sized and smaller-sized firms. And now we have increasing exposure in the market, so we have more user engagement. So the way the platform is designed is that people can sign up and they can create their own profiles. So we have about on average 100 users per day using this platform and this service. And then since I'm an architect and most of my friends in my network are architects, so we've had more individuals from the architecture field, and we started actually by more design technologies. But since I quit my architecture job last year and I focused on this project, I've got to know a lot of people in the construction industry, actually through a great CTEC Club that John has started and is running, through different platforms, through the AIA San Francisco Design Technology committee that I'm part of. So I'm meeting more people in construction and engineering fields, but I would say we have more, we still have more architects than other architects. Yeah.
In terms of the solutions that are provided, the companies that are represented in the platform, is this US based or is it a global initiative with respect to the participants so far?
It's actually global. It turned to be a global initiative. So it started again by mostly, Bay Area friends, Bay Area companies, but now it's becoming a more global. We have a lot of companies. We have from Middle East, from Europe, from Australia, from everywhere that are part of, for some reason, I always feel like maybe because I live here in the Bay Area, I used to know more companies from here, but now that I'm, expanding my horizon, I see that a lot of, exciting technologies are happening all over the world, not just here, maybe here because some companies have more funding, have more resources, they spend more money on marketing, but it doesn't mean that, it's just here, it's everywhere really. So our community is becoming a global community.
That's great to hear, because like you said, it's 2021, you launched, and you already have around 100 participants in the platform. So it looks like it's going to get more attraction as the years come. So I'd like to also help a little bit to our audience so that they can get a better sense in how your platform organizes the solutions for, let's start with the AEC professionals first. And then we can switch to the tech community. So the struggle is real. So we need to swift through all of these solution space that's given to us, right? If I'm not, say, a technology enthusiast and I don't follow up all these daily news or newsletters that are coming out there, how do I use the platform? Where do I start if I'm an AEC professional? Is this like if do I call somebody in your company? Do we provide keywords and do a search in the system? Like, do we start with the problem definition? So if we can help the listeners from that perspective, that would be great.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question, Semiha. So, the way it works now is that, so the problem is that companies have no way to find out, like you said, about the technology. So they either have no way, they have no idea what's happening out there. They are too busy meeting deadlines, pursuing new projects. They just don't follow, or they know what's happening, but they just get overwhelmed, and they don't know, it's like so many technologies, and they can't find the right tool for their practice. So the way we do it is that we organize all these technologies into about 40 categories, like let's say AR, VR, 3D printing, robotic, AI powered. So we have all these categories. So you can go to that, or like visualization, rendering, all kinds of categories. So when you go to that particular category and you find out about the tools. At the same time, we encourage and we have a space for these companies to upload case studies and projects. So when you click on every tool, you find out the case studies and the projects that that tool is working on. So by that, if that technology, you know the target users of that particular, software, if it's a good tool for, like, let's say a 2 people firm, or for like a 100 people, company. Is it a good, product for an architecture company, or for construction, or it's mostly developers who are using it, or for all of them. So you get to know also the phase of design or construction that that product is used for. So you can learn all this, and then when you click on every, like, let's say you are interested to learn about technologies that are being used for residential projects. So if you go to the residential category, then you see this list of all tools. And we also do have a compare feature, and we do have similar tools feature. So I can quickly show you how it works. Is it okay, Semiha? Can I share a screen really quick?
That's great, yeah.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea, the big idea. So this is the website, and then these are, so you go to the homepage, to the web page, and there are all these tools. So you don't know what they are. You don't know if this is a software, or it's a plugin, or it's a add-in, or what it is. So when you hover over them, you can just quickly see the short description. Okay, Snapshot is a collaborative 3D BIM software. Phonogram is an augmented reality for construction and manufacturing. So you can just quickly see what these are. And once you click on any of these tools, like let's say test feed, okay, so test feed is quickly validate assumptions, blah, blah. So then you see, okay, images and videos. So these are just like the introduction to test feed. And then you see these case studies. So these case studies are really dear to my heart, because so when I was working as a design technologist at the architecture firm, and I was the one always convincing our principals to invest in these technologies, I realized that showing them case studies is very powerful, because most decision makers and principals are, more senior, and they cannot necessarily understand things with like these technical words that we use, or like coding. They get terrified. But when you show them these like real world projects, and they see, oh, okay, RBA architects, they've used test feed for this project. So how big is the company? It's 11 to 50 employee. Okay, it's not a huge company. And then what type is this project? It's a residential. Then they get more interested, and they realize that this is not like just for Zaha Hadid company. This can be for a small residential. This tool could be good for a small residential firm. So these case studies, and then there are key facts, so you can see what it is, the pricing, free trial, customer service, blah, blah. And then you can also see similar tools. Okay, similar tools, Delve. Oh, interesting. So you didn't know about Delve. Then you also get to learn about what Delve is, and then you see their case studies. So we are trying to, simplify and make it as accessible and as easy as possible to understand these like really exciting tools. So these are the categories that we have, like let's say, I don't know, like generative design, so, or content or machine learning. So these are all the generative design tools that we have. And then you can click on any of them. And then you go, let's say, to, I don't know, ADU, like accessible dwelling units. You're interested to learn. So you're a developer and you want to learn, or you're just like an individual, you want to build like an, in-law unit in your backyard. So when you check like ADUs, then you see all the technology and all the companies, startups that are working on this. So now we have 10. And then you go to cottage, again, you can see the introduction, the categories, and their case studies.
Yeah,
this is a big idea of like how it works.
This is great. I mean, definitely case studies will help people to see the tool being implemented in a specific project. Does the platform also provide some perspectives and insights on like maturity of the solutions, their adoption rates, etc., like some more insight beyond what it does?
Actually, right now what we have are basically just the case studies as far as like showing the maturity. Like, let's say TestFit has like 10 case studies, and then you want to see that like versus another company that they've just started and they only have like one real world project. So you can see like the experience, and then reading about these projects and learning more about the tools, the key information. So that's what we currently have. And then we also do show that we have that compare, I forgot to show it, compare section that you can see all these tools side by side and you can compare them to one another.
I think that's a great feature. Like you definitely, if you have a pool that you created from this entire search space, you want to see comparatively how this particular tool performs with respect to the competitor, given that they both can solve your problem. Thank you, Niknaz. I'll get back to you with some further questions, but I want to switch the conversation towards John's perspective right now. John, I'm curious to hear from your viewpoint. Assume that I'm a director of technology implementation in an AEC firm, and I'm looking for actually a process that I should be following. What would be your suggestions to help define such a process, to have these kind of people who are at the leadership role and they want to have an implementation in their company, but they don't know where to start with?
So I think the starting point is to know your own business and to think through from an engineering perspective what the needs are. What are the parts of the business, the process steps that need to be improved, and which of those can technology play a part? So it starts with an understanding of the organization in question and the steps that need to be taken, the priorities for those steps to make that sort of improvement. But these are not going to be individual and sort of random improvement programs. They're going to be a coherent set facilitated by common data environments, common schema, investments in things like digital twins that will join up different parts of the business. And then when you've identified the needs that you want to improve, the use cases you want to do something with, you've got to make a decision as to whether you want to make or whether you want to buy. That's whether you're going to develop something internally or whether you're going to buy something. And if you're going to buy something, a technology tool on the market, is that going to be something that's off the shelf from a big tech provider? Is it going to be something that's potentially made available by a smaller startup? Or is it something that's going to be customized and specific that you're going to commission on more of a bespoke basis? You'll need to build the business case for each of those steps in your journey. And I think it's worth being clear that you have to get the expectations right. Have vision. And we often find that these use cases or these individual steps of what people want are just far too modest. I want a slightly easier way of turning on or off that valve. That's not going to transform the business. And I'm very struck by that Henry Ford quote. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. But also the fact that he produced a motor car and he didn't try and produce a teleport system. So the point is what you're trying to do with each of these steps realistic? And the final part of the process about knowing your business and knowing yourself further is around understanding your current capabilities and your current culture. It is not going to be a productive thing to do to try and invest in technology if your business and your capabilities are not going to be able to make that jump. How digital are you? What extra capabilities do you need to invest in? Do you have a culture that is going to receive a new digital tool positively and try and use it, or push it down the other end of the office and find ways to carry on doing the things that they've been doing anyway? So culture. The challenge is typically 10% technology, 90% people and culture, but that's the same with everything, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, you're right, definitely. You mentioned the business case or the use case. Just to help our audience to better understand, how would you define a use case in this context? what are some of the insights for the companies, especially AEC companies, that you would suggest so that they can formulate use cases better for tech implementation for some of their problems?
So if one's following an engineering needs-led process, then one will define these steps that one wants to take with tech or business change investment. And I think use cases is quite a good term because it chunks down the overall digital journey into a series of meaningful steps that are neither too large or too small. And these are linked to demonstrable business changes that can improve the performance of the business. And that's important because I think for each of these use cases, there has to be an underlying business case. So you need to define the change that's coming or the change that's proposed. You need to define the steps that need to be taken to achieve that and the costs and the benefits. It's like doing a whole series of investments, taking on a new member of staff, investing in a new lease or a new office. This is not a million miles away from that. But there is one exception which I would point out, which is a lot of digital investments need to be viewed in an agile way. You don't know quite what you're going to be able to achieve. You don't know what the full benefits are. And it's a flaw that large old world, as we call them, organizations bring into this thought process to adopt a waterfall approach to digital investments. You have to be agile in your thinking. You cannot give a definitive return on investment calculation for a digital investment. You have to be comfortable that there is going to be a larger element of ambiguity. You're going to have to be comfortable that sometimes these things won't go as planned, be comfortable about failure of individual tech investments, whereas over the whole landscape, of course, we all know that technology takes us in a very positive direction, and you need to be comfortable about that investment as a portfolio, a joined up portfolio, whereas individual investments might not turn out as they might do. And people who are brought up on return on investment and sort of certainty of project delivery find that sort of business case and that sort of use case very difficult.
In terms of these use cases or business case implementations, you said follow a waterfall approach. Do you also believe in, especially from an investment decision perspective, is there any suggestion in terms of starting with a pilot study versus launching this entire thing in every business unit in the company?
So part of agile methodology is a series of short sprints. I'm sure I'm telling people on this call who know this sort of approach much better. Scrum Master type approaches, development of minimum viable products. I love the idea that what one is going to do is to do a series of short sprints, maybe 6 weeks or so, produce a minimum viable product, test it, learn, stop, think, pivot, come up with the next sprint and the next plan and move forward. And this is not something that's very easy for engineering and construction, because if you try to build a water pipeline or a building that way, it'll be a disaster. We have waterfall project management plans for a reason. All the different bits have to fit together. But with tech development, this agile approach is very advantageous. And the job of an innovation director is to try to bring some of that innovation and tech and sprint thinking into an old world waterfall organization. And that culture clash is part of the challenge that she or he will need to address.
Right. Yeah. Great insights, John. So you mentioned that culture, 90% that impacts all of these processes. Are there any insights that you might want to share with us? Like, how do we best put people together to bridge the gap between what we are doing in the old world of dealing with AEC and then the new world, technology and the new world?
I'm going to answer that question with perhaps a surprising remark to begin with. One of the things I think is that we should ban the word digital. It's extremely unhelpful. When we talk about a digital thing or a digital project or a digital program, somehow it becomes special, different, alien, unusual. Whereas what we're really talking about is using digital and technology to make changes to the things that we do every day. So I have a client that did just that, banned the word digital. So instead of digital transformation, they're an AEC design firm. Instead of digital transformation, they talk about design transformation. They talk about standardizing design, making designers more efficient. empowering designers using technology, design libraries and data. That doesn't sound scary. That sounds exciting. That sounds the sort of thing that people want to come to work to do. And suddenly you're going with the flow of the river in terms of the culture rather than against it. So sometimes these labels, words like smart, words like digital are helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand where the decision makers are, where the early adopters are in the organization, and go with that. I take a lot of wisdom from, I have two daughters. The elder one tells me, Dad, the one thing you can never do is get somebody to do something that they don't want to do. And I think that's extremely true. And if people in the organization don't want to change, then the change won't happen. And that's part of the need for leaders to prioritize this, to make people clear that this is really important. And it's around all of the business leaders, not just the director of innovation, coming together, showing that this matters, being consistent and carrying people with them. And that's the same with a digital change program. Oops, I said the word, as it is with any other change program. It's around people management, it's around organization management, and tech and digital and data are just part of that. They're nothing particularly different or special. They're just the way in which we can make those organizations change and be more efficient today that we couldn't do 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would like to also start changing the conversation a little bit towards the tech world and tech companies. So maybe we can start with Niknaz to have that conversation and get back to the aec+tech as a platform. I know that the platform helps both the AEC professionals to find solutions for the problems that they have at hand. But I want to hear from you, is there any way that tech professionals or the tech world can get help from the platform as well? Like, how does the platform help the tech solution providers? Is there any way that they can hear the voice of the customer, meaning the pain points of the AEC professionals to improve their product lines, or is there any way that they can showcase their products better in such a platform?
Yeah, thanks, Semiha. That's a great question. So right now, so the way it works is that they can sign up, create profiles, and someone posted the question if we charge them for it, or if it's, it's free right now. So anyone can sign up, create their pages, upload information, and they own their pages, and they can always go back and update and add info. But we also organize events, we write articles. So we really value our one-on-one relationship with these companies. So as John mentioned, sometimes it's really important to know who you talk to at every either AC firm or even tech company, and the questions you ask them. And then, what aec+tech is trying to do is creating that connection between them tech world and the industry. And what John mentioned, that like the words like digital, even word like tech, sometimes is not that could be a little terrifying and scary for people in the industry, people who are used to do things in certain ways. So it's important that you talk to them and you ask them the right question. So what could be a tool or a software or a product that can help you save time, save money, improve your workflow, improve your process? So what is your wish list? What is it that you are currently using? What are the problems with the things that you are using? So we are trying to have we are having this conversation with both groups. So we talk to, because still there is a manageable number of these, users on our platform. So we have hundreds, we still have like thousands, we don't have thousands or like millions. So we really value that, connection and relationship with them. And then we try to understand their product. And then by events, by articles. So last month we posted an article. We went to a number of AEC firms and asked them a number of questions, and we posted an article. So the question we asked were, what are some of your favorite tools that you have used in the last 2 years? So what did you like about them? Why did you not like about them? So wish list. So we asked a number of questions and then we posted them. And then we went back to AEC technology startups and companies and asked them if these, like this article, these answers were helpful or not. Like, let's say NBBJ told us that they use Climate Studio for their energy modeling. And then they shared with us what they like about it and what they don't like about it. And we also organize events. We are in fact having an event next week. We've organized an event next week, and we've invited design technologists from Buro Happold, from Stantec, and from Henning Larsen in Denmark. We've invited design technologists, and we're going to have the same conversation. We're going to ask them, some of them are even developing tools in-house. So we're going to ask them about what they are doing and what it is that they think is important right now to improve the way we do things, to, you know, improve our workflow. So that's how we are connecting the two sides.
On top of these, is there any particular way that you maybe want to deploy in the future to evaluate product maturities in your platform for better guiding the community, especially the professionals?
Yeah, so we have plans, you know, our long-term vision is to make this platform as smart as possible. So we have a machine learning advisor. He's going to help us develop a model that can, once we have like thousands of case studies, hopefully soon, because now we have like hundreds and it's not enough data to have like, you know, AI-powered models. So once we have all this data, he will help us have a model that can give smart and as accurate as possible recommendations to both sides. So as an AEC technology company, you would get recommendation for potential clients. And as an AEC professional and end user of these technologies, you would also get recommendation for the right tool for your process. So that's the vision we have, but we are not there yet. We still don't have that much data. So what we are focused on right now is expanding our community, you know, inviting people to share their knowledge with us, and take things from there. Yeah,
looks like, I mean, your pathway is going in a great direction. John, let me ask you a similar question. It's on the same context. So we have all these startups, we have all these tech solutions that are coming out. How can AEC firms evaluate if the tech companies are genuine? Are there any like soft or hard mechanisms that out there that we can differentiate genuine ones from yet to be developed establishments?
Yeah, so it is very difficult at the moment. People I know in relevant roles in AEC are saying they're getting 20 or 30 incoming emails a day or LinkedIn emails a day saying, look at us, we've got some great tech. The noise out there is absolutely huge. And we don't have, because it's a newish sector, we don't have all of the mechanisms, soft and hard, that we would expect in other sectors. So we're pretty sophisticated as human beings, aren't we, in choosing what bank we go and bank with, or if a new fizzy drink comes onto the market. But I don't think it's too far away from the ways in which we make decisions as human beings, good decisions mostly, across the whole landscape of our lives. So we have brands. So we have the big brands in AEC tech. Are they trusted? Are they not? But you know you're getting something significant if you've got an Autodesk or a Bentley behind a particular product. But the startups have perhaps the fleetness of foot and access to innovation. There are some groups out there like Gartner and Forrester that are providing some indications on industry trends and providing some reviews. But again, that's not very well developed. So I think we're into who do we know and trust as individuals. There's the innovation director of a large contractor in the UK who has a particular policy. He won't talk to any construct tech startup unless he's got 3 independent recommendations. People who've said, oh, you should have a look at such and such. And that means that his field of focus is quite narrow, but it is a good way of making sure he's not wasting his valuable time and that the startups he's talking to are promising. It's a challenge for startups trying to market themselves when they need that sort of endorsement by people that old world innovation leaders will know. And then in terms of other sources of information, I know there are people in the webinar from the specialist venture capital community for construction tech, and that is a very powerful source of information. These guys really know what's going on in the industry. They are seeing lots of startups, whether that's a soft way of getting to know what's going on from them, or a slightly more joined up financially based way of being a limited partner to a VC. That is certainly a very good and sophisticated source of information. And then you've got conferences. And I think one of the questions you were asking earlier around trials was innovation directors can create their own processes to try and learn and fast fail technologies. And finally, I'll just sort of say a little conversation about the CTEC Club. I think in any endeavor, be it playing sports or in music, people who are in that world really know and can judge who's quality and who's not. And so we have, with the CTEC Club, a founders community. Those founders are practitioners in construction tech every day. And we love it when founders are able to help other founders, but they're also very well able to judge who's got real potential and who hasn't. And it is, I think, a very good sign when a founder who's been successful is prepared to invest in another startup. So we see Lee Jasper, founder of aec+tech, investing in MathTrack. We see the lead in Spacemaker investing in NPlan, where founders are voting with their pockets, so to speak. That's a very powerful sign. So learning and understanding what founders think of other startups, I think, is another very positive way of getting information.
All right. These are great insights, John. Thank you so much. Niknaz, maybe a last couple of questions here that I want to ask and open the conversation with the audience here. Do you have some mechanisms that you want to use in the platform for better community engagement? Like, how do you get the community to be engaged in your platform? What are some of the things that are working right now or you want to implement in the future so that you have this large community of tech world plus the C professionals work together and find solutions or provide solutions to the problems that we have?
Yeah, sure. So we usually reach out to them, and invite them to the platform, or many have reached out to us and asked us to be listed. So right now the platform is open to all. So anyone who is interested, those who we reach out to, we explain to them the benefits of, having a page. They're going to promote their tool. They're going to feature their projects. They're going to share knowledge. They're going to contribute to the betterment of our built world. Ultimately it's good to share the benefits and the knowledge experience that they have using different tools. So we try to explain all these benefits and invite them to the platform. And luckily in the post-pandemic world, things like cloud flexibility, distributed teams, and remote and hybrid work are now becoming the standard in so many other areas. So it's a very exciting time for our industry because many are realizing how old-fashioned we do things and are realizing that they would really fall behind if they don't pay attention to using these new tools and benefiting from them. So almost everyone we've invited to, I would say like 95% have joined our community and have started their pages. And there's this really growing appetite for being part of this design and construction technology communities like this, that they can keep updated with what's happening. I'm sorry, Samia, I think you asked one more question. Did I answer your question? I think you asked 2 questions, right?
I think you answered the most important one, like how do you keep the community engaged through your platform? Maybe one question, last question that I want to ask to both of you, just to wrap up the conversation. There are tools that are out there that are open source, right? We have open source tools. And we have also these tech companies and solutions that are coming up are very company specific, right? They are the sole proprietary of the companies. Do you see your communities promoting or accelerating the use of these open source tools in the AEC industry? Maybe we can start with Niknaz, followed up with John.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna go first. Sorry, John. So I think we are still not there compared, I mean, relative, if we want to compare our industry to other industries. So we still, like, I feel like still like secrecy and competition are inherent parts of what we do on a daily basis. You know, like imagine there's a physical project and a number of companies, you know, compete for that project and only one or two get to design and build it. So we are used to, you know, competing with each other and always hiding things and consider everything as like inside knowledge. But things are changing and are improving, and I see a growing culture. I feel like John was mentioned earlier, that it's a culture like any other, you know, culture that starts with a small group of people and others look and follow. So it's starting, and actually the event that we have next week, we've invited Michael from Waterfall, and they are developing open source tools in-house at Waterfall, and they are hoping that everyone can use it. And, you know, they are sharing their data sets with everyone. So we had another event about machine learning and AEC last month, and we had a scientist from Autodesk who was sharing with us how even at Autodesk they don't have enough access to data sets that they can work with. And even in our industry, we don't have, compared to, like, if you think about like medical field, like food industry, we have a very limited number of like data scientists and scientists who are working with this data. So not a lot of companies are still willing to share. And what I always use as a way to encourage people to share with us is that, so it's knowledge, it's really like sharing knowledge. And sometimes we just assume that the client is not okay with like us sharing their data, or the owner, but it never hurts to ask it. Sometimes it's just our assumption. If we ask, they may be fine. You know, and we should start from somewhere, and everyone can start, you know, by themselves, just asking the client, the owner, if it's okay, you know, to share this data sets. And I think we're getting there.
Do you think you might have in the future feature some of these open source tools as they become much more and more available to our industry?
Sure, we actually do have a category right now as open source. So if you go to the website, you click on open source, you can see tools that are currently open source, but we hope to have more in the near future.
Great. John?
I think it's fascinating at the moment because there's a whole series of different strategies being considered and deployed. Should startups make their capabilities available through large aggregating platforms like Procore? And where does the balance between market power move between access to additional clients, but potentially access through a third party that you don't have control of? Should the open source question sort of falls into that category? And similarly, from the perspective of large AEC companies, where do they need to differentiate themselves through their data and their software systems? Can they simply go and buy an Autodesk or a Bentley stack? Do they want to go down more of a microsystems route where they're drawing the best together to meet their clients' needs? To what extent are they selling themselves on service or tech? So there's a whole series of questions that all of the industry players are looking at, which makes it so fascinating as a fast-moving sector. Who will the winners and who will the also-rans will be? Well, we'll look back on 10 years' time and see. But I think those companies that have real sustainable advantage through access to data, through step change capabilities that others can't do, and through barriers to entry, it's kind of strategy 101. Those are the ones that I would be putting my money into if I was an investor, or those are the ones I'd want to work with, or indeed fear, if I was an innovation director in an AEC company.
Great, John. I mean, the conversation so far was excellent, especially hearing from your perspectives for where to look to find an organized environment to figure out what tools are out there and how to evaluate them. Also looking from the perspective of what are some mechanisms out there that we can use to see the maturity or genuineness of the products or the companies out there that are bringing us a new world of doing things to our community. I'd like to turn the conversation towards the questions from the audience. Margie, would you like to lead the remaining part of the conversation with the questions from our audience?
Great, thank you. This has been so inspiring. We have a question here from Cesar Escalante. Investing in startup products is risky. Not all technologies will make it to a mature stage. How can businesses stay on top of the innovation curve without wasting already limited operational resources? And I think, John, it makes me think, as you work on some of the very large infrastructure projects that you've been involved with in advising the British government, how do you begin this conversation with very large organizations?
Yeah, it is difficult. And the extent to which those companies, those organizations are prepared to invest in technology, a lot of which won't be fully ready to be deployed on their systems, is a challenge. And where should the value for that end up? And I'm struck by a particular business or investment model which we think is very promising, which is called the venture client model. So large infrastructure organizations do not want or do not need to be equity owners in the startups. What they want is the benefit of their innovations deployed on their rail network or their road network to the benefit of their users and to lower the cost of producing the infrastructure. So the venture client model was developed by BMW Garage, and it effectively says, we will be the best home for tech. Come to us rather than Mercedes or Audi, and we will make it as easy as possible for you to deploy your tech on our cars and our platforms. We want the innovation. In return, you get access to market and you get a guaranteed sale. And we're having various conversations with large infrastructure owners and water utilities about the venture client model. And as Cesar says, it's risky to invest if you can take the need to invest out of the loop for working with startups. That's one fewer moving part. And we think it's a very interesting model that BMW have developed that has a lot of resonance for infrastructure.
Niknaz, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think John said it beautifully.
Okay, great. I'm wondering about, there's a question here about the club that you formed. Could you talk a little bit more about admission to that, John, and how might one be engaged more deeply with that?
So what we've been trying to create with the CTEC Club is a safe space for founders to come and share their problems and their challenges. Often they're young. It can be quite a lonely place to be. You know, they're thinking things like, hey, someone's given me $3.5 million. I'm the leader of the team. I'm supposed to have all the answers, but I don't feel like I know what to do. And I can't ask my investor. I can't ask my client. I can't ask my staff, and I can't ask my partner. Who can I ask? The answer is a fellow founder. So we've created this safe space. We have 2 rules of the CTEC Club, a bit like Fight Club, but they are different rules. The first rule is it's on what we call Chatham House rules. So what stays within the CTEC Club stays within the CTEC Club. And the second rule is no selling. So we're there to support each other. So it's a by founders for founders group. And it sometimes swells my ego a little bit when some of the great and the good contractors and consultants in the world come along and say, hey, John, can we join the CTEC Club? And the answer is no, because you're not a founder. And it's there for a particular purpose, to create a community of people to support. All of those companies in their own way are eating little bits of the elephant that is new construction technology. We think they're all stronger by working together and seeing how those little bits join up into something a bit bigger.
That's great. I'm wondering, we have a question here from Louise Barber. Is there any dialogue occurring about how to make technology synchronize or how to standardize approaches? And I'd like each of you to answer that question, and what advice you would have as people try and think about how to synchronize new technologies as well.
I can add to that question a little bit. especially when you have all these work processes where there are different stakeholders lined up, and where an earlier stakeholder's output is the input for the next stakeholder to have this entire workflow for the design, construction, and operation. This data transfer and making sure that you don't need to reformat or re-enter the data again when you're moving to the next workflow. Like this, I think question is important in terms of the synchronization. Like how do you make sure that this data flows and then you don't have these barriers of I'm using this format versus I'm using another technology that uses completely another format.
John, I can go first if you don't mind. So we have this integration, if I'm not sure if it's the right answer or not, but what I'm thinking about is the integration between different software and different tools. Mm-hmm. So right now for these case studies that we invite our users to upload, we ask them what tool they use for each phase of their design or construction. And then we don't currently have it, but we are adding an integration section where we map the technologies and tools and software and plugins that work together. So let's say for the pre-design phase or for programming phase, there are certain tools and then there are certain software. So it's really important to know what these softwares work with as far as like other softwares, because like Semiha, you are explaining, companies are not most of the time willing to change their whole workflow, their whole process. So it's very natural to go little by little. So it's good to show them these integration models and show them how other companies are doing it and what softwares and products work with each other. So that's how we are mapping. We are going to map tools and show them that, like, let's say for project management, construction management, going from design to construction, like going from DD to CD to CA. So how these products and technologies currently work with.
So just adding to that, we see more and more companies developing and offering open APIs to connect their products to other products and allow those products to connect in with them. And we think that's very positive. But there's something that lies underneath that, which is around how data is structured, how taxonomies and schema work. So if Niknaz has an information model, XYZ geometry, object classification is the same in her model as it is in mine. And we have in the UK something called the National Digital Twin Programme, run by the Centre for Digital Built Britain and supported and encouraged by the government, and a set of Gemini principles. And that's been very good to get national infrastructure owners producing their digital twins and their digital models with common data formats. The idea being that if a water company and a highways company have two separate digital models, but they're on the same data schema, you can put them together and see where the roads go and see where the pipes go, and that's to everybody's benefit. So I think APIs is one thing. I think underlying common taxonomies and schema with information sets that are dictated by industry, government, or at least encouraged, I think that will make the join up between our digital models a whole sight easier.
I completely agree. I truly supporting these common data structures and data schemas to be used in our industry to streamline all of these work processes and eliminate this cost of lack of interoperability. So it's a real problem, and I'm hopeful that in the new world of these startups and tech companies keep an eye on this real problem as well.
John, I'd just like to ask how the British government encourages this, or what inspired them to take that step forward of encouraging the entire country to move in that direction.
So the Cabinet Office in the UK, I think, is to be commended for being quite forward-sighted. They see benefits in consistency in the way we design using BIM. They mandated BIM level 2 on projects, so anybody bidding to the UK government needs to design in BIM and be BIM level 2 compliant. That's not the cutting edge of BIM, but it does make every contractor and consultant wake up and realize this is for real if they're not going to win work with the government. But the government's funded various innovation initiatives. We have something called Innovate UK, which puts a lot of money into this sort of area. And the Centre for Digital Built Britain, which is partly the University of Cambridge and partly other bodies as well, has really offered a leadership role in this area. And it is something I think that we're finding a lot of interest with other countries around the world as to how a mixture between government support in procurement and government funding to an industry body to guide and lead standards can make a real difference. And I don't know of another country that is further ahead of the UK in terms of BIM and digital twins. Not to say there isn't one out there, but I think the UK is doing pretty well, along with Australia, along with Sweden, and the US is coming through too.
Yeah, we do have the Building Smart Alliance that US has chapters with it that deals with exactly the same problem of how do you define level of detail in the model. So we have this BIM forum that provides this LOD specification. That problem, the pain is well acknowledged by everyone dealing with digital content. And there are initiatives that are being taken across the world to provide a solution to that interoperability problem for sure.
That's great. I can't believe it, but we're at the end of the hour. Boy, did this conversation move so quickly and so deeply. I can't thank you all enough. For our audience, this concludes CIDCI's first online salon of 2022. This session will be recorded and placed on the CIDCI website and YouTube as soon as possible. Please feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. To join us for future webinars, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter on our website, CIDCI.org. Our special and deepest thanks to Semiha, John, and Niknaz for your amazing presentations, your honesty and your openness, and all you've shared with us. In less than an hour, you've given us so much to consider. We extend our deepest gratitude to all of you. Be sure to join us next month on February 25th for a different kind of session. Longtime business consultant Gloria Flores will discuss learning to learn and collaborate with others, navigating moods in the workplace and beyond. Although most people can tell you when they're in a good mood or a bad mood, moods are much more nuanced and influential than many people realize. Join us at this conversation and be prepared to learn something about yourself that you may not be aware of and how you can build better teams. Our special thanks to Katie Olson for keeping us on track and all of our sponsors who made this possible. Thanks for joining us. And as always, if you have any thoughts or comments, please reach us via the CIDCI website's Contact Us link. Thank you so much for joining us.